Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and today I'm joined by, once again, Russell Boyce, who is standing in for Lawrence Connolly, and also our Tuesday regular, Natasha Meikle. Welcome back, Natasha. How have you been?
Great, good to be here. Nice to have Russell subbed in. Welcome to Tuesday Club, Russell.
Thanks, Natasha. I appreciate it. I'm actually sick of my own opinions now, Paul. I can't actually keep up with my own contradictions anymore, my own nonsense. So if anything I say today is taken, please take it at face value, because 3 days in the trot, you tend just to get caught up in your own web of nonsense, you know what I mean?
Your own web of lies, and someone will pick you up on that, Russell, I'm pretty sure, on social media. There is so much to discuss. You've not had an opportunity on ACSOM yet, Natasha, to have a chat about the game at the weekend. So let's quickly run through that before we look ahead, not only to the Europa League playoff tie tomorrow night, but also to the Women's Champions League game. But yes, Hearts, revenge, good performance, couple of wee bits to talk about in the second half. What was your thoughts overall?
Do you know, I just really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the football we played, I enjoyed the performance, and if ever a scoreline didn't actually represent a game of football, that was it. You know, the stats were incredible, particularly in the first half. You're talking about us having something like 82% of possession in the first half, 20 shots of goal. And it was just so good to watch. And you're sitting there thinking, like, how are we not 4-0 up going in at half time? And all of a sudden at 90 minutes, you're looking back questioning, how on earth was that 3-2? But it's what Ange brings, and it's what the Celtic fans want to see, is this exciting, fast-paced football that gets you out of your seat. It's entertaining, it's enjoyable. But it also flagged up that there are still issues, and don't get me wrong, we're far from the finished article. It's great to watch, but what I think the 3-2 scoreline identified was that there are still issues needing addressed. They're the same issues we know about, and it's time for the board to listen to Ange and address these issues, because he's saying it every week. He's repeatedly asking for additions to the squad. He's saying the same things. And now it's time to address that. And there is positive signs with the news of the new right back perhaps being imminent, that they are beginning to be addressed. We can talk about the time it's taken to do so. But overall, the performance against Hearts, really promising, continues to identify that we're a bit susceptible at the back, but definitely going in the right direction.
There's a couple of things I wanted to talk about yesterday, but Russell and Tony went off and won a couple of times, and we ran out of time, as you do, Russell, but that's what this is all about. But the first thing I was going to say was, in my Celtic supporting life, which, as I keep reminding everybody, has spanned 5 decades of going to Celtic Park. Believe it or not, I have watched Celtic in 5 different decades. Russell, I know you're looking there under your fringe thinking, how on earth have you done that, mate? But see, when you get to my age, it is doable. So yes, the first game in 87 and the fact that we've just entered the 2020s is the reason why. But when we look back on all the different teams, and I asked myself, what's the high points? Well, the centenary season, massive because of the significance of that season in the club's history. Russell Boyce, by the way, Natasha, was born on the same day that Celtic were founded. But, you know, a few years later, 100 years later.
100, exactly.
Yep, on the 100th birthday of the club. So I look back fondly on that team. I look back fondly on Martin O'Neill's team for obvious reasons, the success, the treble, the Seville run. But, you know, like a lot of Celtic fans, I look back on the Tommy Burns team, and I look back on that side because they were so entertaining. I mean, we've seen managers coming in previously talking the talk and saying, this is how I want to play, this is my philosophy. Now, Tommy Burns played what is the Celtic way, you know, whatever the Celtic way is, you know, the entertaining football, the fast-paced football, the players that he had at his disposal. But his Achilles heel, that team's Achilles heel, was a defence. And I've said this so many times, right? Eventually, he started trying to build that defence by bringing in players like Alan Stubbs, who was a proper defender. I mean, even when you look at the right and the left back and Jackie Mack and Tosh McKinley, they were your typical up and down attacking fullbacks, overlapping fullbacks, old-fashioned way. But if we had a decent defence from day one, if we had a decent goalkeeper from day one, that Tommy Burns side would have been a completely different team in terms of the honours won. Because let's not forget, we only won one Scottish Cup. We look back on the Andy Toms of this world and Van Hooijdonk and Cadet and Di Canio and these entertaining players. But we couldn't shut the door at the back. And I'm looking at this Ange team at the moment, in its early days, and that's one of my big concerns, is that, yes, when we go forward, we are astonishing to watch. I mean, previous to the game at the weekend, Ryan Christie was flying. Tommy Rodgick's playing again like we knew he could back in the day. We've got the new signings coming in. Kyogo, absolute revelation. Abada was looking the same before he dropped out, probably with a wee injury. And he's got us playing like that. But the seeded doubt, and the reason why it ended up 3-2, Natasha, was because we couldn't get the back door locked. Russell, how much of a concern is it, and can we put it right in the next couple of weeks?
Well, in terms of comparing it with the Tommy Burns thing, I think the difference is as well in those eras is Tommy Burns was on probably a shoestring budget in comparison with, when you only look at the player sales Celtic have made over the last 12 months, there should be enough tools there for Ange, if he identifies a player, for us not to have an excuse not to go and get them. That's the way I see it. That's where my frustration would lie. Whereas I think Tommy Burns probably had to pick or choose whether he went for the attacking options or the defensive options, if his budget was either going to go one way or the other. I can't help but feel with Ange, we have got more than enough resources just on player sales alone, let alone another year of sold-out season tickets, by the way. I think there should be no excuse. If we want to go get the Croatian right back for £2.5 million 2 weeks ago, then he should be in the door 2 weeks ago. Because right now what we're watching is the effects of when Andrew's back in the other half of the field. Look at the effects that's had. It's been outstanding to watch. Absolutely brilliant. Why could he not have a similar impact in defence and shut up shop with, Starfelt was bought in for £4 million. There's one part of the puzzle. There's 3 other positions across that back four that I still think need reinforcement. I'm not necessarily saying they need to be taking Ralston's place, for example, or stealing Stephen Welsh's place, but they should be coming in there and pushing for the jersey. And I definitely think it is time that Ange gets back in that department. The sooner the better. And obviously the clock's now running down on the transfer window. I think there's 13, 14 days left anyway. So either way, it's make or break time in that department for me.
When we look at that, Natasha, it's difficult because you don't want to take away from the positives, and there have been some tremendous positives, and what we're getting in the moment is an idea, like a glimmer of hope of what we could achieve under this gaffer who many people had written off when he came in. And as Russell says there, we are still playing with a makeshift defence. So we've gone into the first game, and having predicted that we would go into the first game with a back four of Welsh and Beaton and Ralston and Taylor, it actually came to fruition. So we've gone into the qualifiers with that defence. Now, from that, you've got to say, in my opinion, that Welsh and Ralston, I don't think many people would argue that they've done extremely well. I think Taylor still gets a hard time, and there's parts of his game that can improve, particularly under the system that Ange wants to play. But I think that he's done okay. And then obviously there's a question mark around the centre-half position as well, because even though we brought Starfelt in, we still need to strengthen that area. My biggest concern, my worry, Natasha, is the fact that it does seem to be dragging on. I mean, we heard about the interest in, for example, Josip Juranovic some time ago. It's only now that it would appear that we're making some real progress in bringing him in. He's your right back. Now, if I've got to be bold here, I would say across the defence at this moment in time, although I do think we need to strengthen in the right back position, it's the least of my worries, I would suggest. Actually, the right back position. We've also seen, interest in various other players kind of dying down a bit. So Jan Couto, 19 years of age, Manchester City, looks like it's not happening, and that Braga might come in and take him. And that's probably why we're putting all our eggs in the basket for Juranovic now. Liam Scales is an interesting one. So he plays centre-half. He plays for Shamrock Rovers, 23 years of age. He's a Republic of Ireland under-21 internationalist. For me, this has got Dermot Desmond's dibs all over it. He's a 25%. He has a 25% share rather in Shamrock Rovers. He obviously knows the player. The manager has revealed that it looks as though that deal will be done. Even if it is done, Natasha, we need another centre half. I mean, that screams project signing to me.
It does, and I'm not sure he improves what we have there in terms of Welsh and Starfelt, so he's not someone who's going to come in and instantly improve that back line. Taking them in turn like you have, Ralston has done fine. You know, I've said it multiple times on this show, I absolutely admire his attitude more than anything. He gets criticism consistently. A lot of it is undue. He's the sort of player that will come in and do his job and give 110% every game, and absolutely credit to him for that. And he has looked good, and he just keeps getting better and better. The concern is, though, we are about to go into another round of Champions League, or of European qualifying, if only it was Champions League. That's the women's team. If we're about to go into another European qualifying round with Ralston as our only recognised right back, that's so hampering to the football that Ange is trying to play, to have that lack of depth in the squad. I don't think we need the Man City guy on loan as well as Juranovic. So perhaps if that one's fallen through, then Juranovic is the right target. And if it was to be a choice, then I'm 100% would rather bring Juranovic in as our player than the Man City player to on a loan to develop. That's what I would rather do. We don't need both. But why has it taken to this point of the transfer window? We knew from the outset that that was a position that was a priority, and they've still not addressed it before another European qualifier. So that's a concern, but I am absolutely sure that Postecoglou shares these concerns. Everything he is saying post-match in interviews in the press is that I need reinforcements. There's players playing every game, every minute, because I have no other option. He's been very open about that in front of the camera, so you can only imagine what he is saying behind the scenes, and I'm sure he's frustrated that he's not been able to get anyone in that position yet too. I think that is one that we are likely to see over the coming days. Again, it's too late. That's not a new criticism for the club, but it isn't the only spot that we need to address in that defence, like you've both touched upon. Scales coming in is not really what I would be looking for to address the centre-half options. Of course, we'll give him a chance. You know, we're not writing him off before he's signed by any means. But is he the calibre of player that is going to come in and improve our defence? Is he going to take Welsh's position? Is he going to take Starfelt's? Julian's when he's back to full fitness? I don't see that happening. And so I think we still need another centre-half. And Taylor is our sort of, you know, one left back. We don't know what's happening with Bolingoli. It seems he's very far out of the picture. Taylor as our only left back, again, is not enough depth, and questionable as whether it's the quality we need. Both Ralston and Taylor, I think, will do a fine job, an okay job, as they have done so far in the league, domestically most of the time. But if we really are trying to progress and try and get further in our European competitions, improve the build-up play, improve the team as a whole, I don't know if Ralston and Taylor, I don't think that Ralston and Taylor are the quality that we should be striving for. Both great backups. I think we can do better. Whether we will see improvements coming in both positions, I don't know. The right back slot, I expect, but I wonder what we're going to do about that left back spot.
You know, when you're looking at it, I have been focusing on the fact that the transfer window is going to slam shut at 11 o'clock on the 31st of August. It's been open since the 9th of June. And since then, we've been bounced out the Champions League because we were underprepared. We've gone in with a makeshift defence, which was depleted even more because of the stupidity of one of our more experienced players. We're now in a playoff for the Europa League, and we're still underprepared. So it's not as though we've only had a couple of weeks here. I mean, the transfer window opened on the 9th of June. And 2 months later, plus, we're still sitting here thinking we've got one right back. We've only got, you know, we've got 3 left backs, but one of them is Montgomery, who, by the way, has looked really good when he's come in. One of them, we would rather not play in Bolingoli because I'm pretty sure he will be offloaded. And the other one, there is a question mark around, particularly when you're playing a higher calibre of opposition. And tomorrow night, that's exactly what we'll be doing, Russell. It's a wee bit frustrating. As much as it was great to bring in Joe Hart and James McCarthy, it's a wee bit frustrating that Did we, you asked the question, did we really need cover in McCarthy's position? Did we need cover in that area of the park when we're so desperately in need of cover at right back, centre half, left back? I mean, how frustrating is that for yourself, looking at that, the fact that we've had 2.5 months to put this right and we still haven't put it right yet?
A couple of different angles you can look at this now, Paul, because if Ange is fully much in the driver's seat, then are these positions he's had a blind spot to that he's not addressed initially because he's not recognised the need for improvement in these quarters? Or is it he's not getting his message across the board and the board are dithering again? You then talk about the arrival of the lad from Shamrock Rovers in a Dermot Desmond production. Could you argue the same with James McCarthy? 4 days before we were told Dermot Desmond was taking a hands-on approach to transfers, Joe Hart and James McCarthy were in the door. It's an interesting angle. I'm not saying that's how it is, but you've got to look at it from all aspects. Either way, something's not right in regards to that. I appreciate though as well, the other narrative we were told at the start is this job will take Ange several transfer windows to get right. We can't all expect it all at once then perhaps. And would you not rather wait till January and get the right addition into the squad? Or whether it be next summer, then rush it now because there's 2 weeks left? We all know the position we've left ourselves in regards to the Champions League. At the end of the day, the team is doing well, and it may well be the approach that if it's not the right candidate for the job, you either get a loan guy in the meantime, or you don't, or you go with what you've got. Unfortunately, that might be the situation we're in. Do you really want us to go out and rush now and spend 3 to 4 million on another ball and goalie, for example, at left back? What's the point? Maybe Ange is now going to need to get the time to consider what areas of the team over the next few months need addressed imminently, what need addressed more importantly, and where he wants to spend whatever's left of his budget, the majority of that budget on. I certainly think whether he brings in a Shamrock Rovers centre half, I can't remember his name, sorry about that, I'm not trying to be rude.
Liam Scales,
that's the one. So if they bring him in, I would still say that doesn't fit the profile of centre back that I think we need. I'm very much of the opinion we need an experienced centre half in there. I think Starfelt needs time to settle. It's not a witch hunt. He needs time to settle. That's all. I think with regards to Welsh, it's unfair that Welsh is now becoming the guide as opposed to the guided. I think that's where he should be right now. For me, I would bring in someone in their 30s. Well, not necessarily need to be in their 30s. Not that there's anything wrong with being in your 30s. But,
or even in your 40s.
I would recommend that we bring in someone with a lot of experience that perhaps could become something of a mentor for even though Starfelt's 25, 26, it looks to me like he needs a bedding in period, and I would hate to see Chris Julian rushed in to accommodate that and then end up out for an even longer period because the injury reoccurs or anything like that, and we have seen that in the past.
Interesting times because we have been here before with regards to transfers, and Stephen Sloan comes in to say again, we offer less than a club are asking for and get rejected Groundhog Day every day. Capital mark, it's essential that the manager is back properly and in good time. Will the board have the foresight to do this? Will they need to? I mean, these are the competitions where there is a huge stream of income over and above what you would expect to be bringing in through season ticket sales, domestic sponsorship and broadcasting. And it once again seems as though we are grossly underprepared for it. Tomorrow night is going to be a massive challenge. And I think that, as well as Ralston has done, and I've been a big supporter of Ralston over the period, as well as he's done, this is a step up. And it's at this stage that you really will separate the men from the boys, or the domestic from the European players, I guess would be a better way to describe that. Another one who we were said to be interested in, and he would have actually solved a couple of problems, was Ben Davis, who can play left back or centre half. He was at Liverpool. He's gone on loan to Sheffield United. So it does seem as though we are labouring some of these deals to such a degree that we're missing out on some targets, Henry being another potential signing up front for us. But let's have a wee chat. And you know what, Natasha, I'm going to start with the Champions League, because that's where Celtic would have liked to have been playing their football. And we are, but it's the women's team. Now, you've taken a great involvement in our coverage of the women's game. You have attended numerous press conferences. You have interviewed Fran Alonzo directly, and you do have a good knowledge of the game. We are playing in the Champions League, and it's live tomorrow. at 5 o'clock on Alba and also Premier Sports, isn't it? How do you see that going, and how great is it that we can tune in and watch Celtic in the Champions League?
I think firstly it's just an incredible achievement for the girls to get into the Champions League. You know, this is a team who've only been professional for just over a year, and already they're getting Champions League football, which is an incredible achievement, a great reward for a really successful season last season. If you look at last season, that was described as a 2-horse race between Glasgow City and Rangers. Celtic came second in that 2-horse race and managed to get that Champions League slot. So it's absolutely brilliant for the girls to be in this competition. Realistically, it's going to be a very, very tough game. Levante finished 7 points ahead of Atletico Madrid last season, just 4 points behind the leaders Real Madrid. So it's going to be a level of challenge that the team have never faced before. And Fran Alonzo has been very open about the fact that the team are underdogs. We saw that they thrived on that tag last season, and there's a real great mentality about the team. Fran himself is in no doubt that this is going to be a very tough test. Levante were probably one of the hardest teams that we could have drawn in the competition. But regardless of what happens tomorrow night, the experience of this level of competition and level of opposition for the girls is really going to help the team grow, help prepare for the season ahead. And it's fantastic for the club that we are represented in this competition. And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing how the girls do.
Me as well. I mean, we'll cover the game on a Celtic State of Mind whenever a game is available to watch on the telly or online. We do cover it, and I'm looking forward to it also. Fran Alonzo is someone that you've spent a bit of time with, you've interviewed. How impressed have you been with the way he conducts himself? And also he's got his own philosophy, isn't he?
He does. He's absolutely fantastic coach. It really shines through just watching him at the side of a park. But on top of that, you know, he's a great person as well. He's really great to speak to. He's really engaging. He comes across so well. And one thing that has shone through from the minute he joined this club is that he gets it. He has really bought into this club. He understands what Celtic is about. He knows how important it is to the fans. He is fully bought into it. If you Skype Fran Alonzo sitting in his own living room, he has Celtic strips on the walls of his house. He is bought into this and he loves being at this club, and he's got an absolutely brilliant relationship with the players in his team and with the club in general. So Fran is absolutely brilliant, and what he's doing for the women's team and women's football in Scotland is remarkable. So really, really great to have him here. And it's a great squad he's assembling as well. There's a lot
of changes, isn't there?
There has been a lot of changes this season. It has been a bit of a turnover period. We have lost some key players. Our top goal scorer, our player of the year from last season have left the club. But what's been really interesting is that the club have, really went out and made some really interesting appointments. We've brought the first Chinese female player to play in Scotland over in Shen Mengyu, which is exciting. We've brought Shorts over from New Zealand who played at the Olympics. Charlie Wellings has already scored a hat-trick in pre-season, much like Kyogo. So we have really enhanced the squad as well. So it'll be interesting to see a slightly new look Celtic team going into this season with some of the stalwarts from last season still there, but they are really developing a great team there, and I look forward to seeing how they do this season.
Is it being played in Trondheim? Is that right?
That's Norway? Right, playing in Norway. There's a bit of a complicated structure for the Women's Champions League at the moment, with a sort of mini group and teams playing within a group to determine who goes through to the next round, but it is being playing in Trondheim, that's right. And I've seen on Twitter, actually, there's a Celtic supporters club out in Trondheim who have got a group going to the game tonight, so I think that's tomorrow night, so that's absolutely brilliant. I saw them getting their banners ready on Twitter, so great for them, and I hope they enjoy the game and give the girls a good backhand.
It's great to hear. I mean, Trondheim is actually twinned with Dunfermline, Russell Boyce. It's a twin town. Yes, of Dunfermline, and it was the birthplace of one Harold Bratback. So there you go.
Yes, I knew that. I was going to say, I was going to do a Jim Orr link there.
Well,
You
yeah.
just stole my thunder, mate.
There you go. Now, when I think of Levante, I think of Johan Mjällby, because that's where he went after he left Celtic. And you're looking a bit Swedish there yourself, Russell, with that Adidas tracksuit top on.
That's on you, mate.
Yep. Let's have a wee chat about the men's team and what we're doing in Europe. And this is, for me, the biggest challenge we've had this season. We're in better shape, I think, than we were when we played Midtjylland, but we're up against better opposition as well. Now, that point I made about the Tommy Burns team, what I was also going to say is that I was interested to look through the arrivals of the various managers that I have witnessed come into Celtic Park. And some of them have come in with this intention to play a certain way, to bang on about their philosophy in terms of how they play the beautiful game. And two of the managers that spring to mind were Tony Mowbray and John Barnes. Tony Mowbray spoke about a football utopia, if you'll remember. John Barnes spoke about the style of football that he would be playing, being an entertaining style of football. And it worries me a wee bit when you come in with that, because I would then compare that to Brendan Rodgers and Martin O'Neill's comments when they first came to the club, and it was all about success and winning and instilling a winning mentality in the club. Ange Postecoglou came in and he spoke about a style, and that worried me a wee bit. And we're seeing the style, though, Russell, we're seeing the style of what might be Ange Ball, as we've heard it being called. Tomorrow night is the biggest challenge that we'll have faced this season. We're going to have to lock the back door. What do you think will happen in terms of the lineup? Will there be changes made for tomorrow night's game?
I don't think so. I think tomorrow he will go for the jugular first half, the same way he has in the last few matches we've seen. I think it will be all-out attack, try and kill off this tie. And I don't even think he'll intend to keep that up for 90 minutes, because I think we've seen already physically it's almost impossible to play at that pace for 90 minutes, even for the fitter elements of the squad. As Tony funnily pointed out yesterday, Tom Rogic made it to 73 minutes playing the highest paced football of all time. So that was a miracle in itself. I think that he will go for the jugular tomorrow. It's interesting when you talk about the style stroke success argument. One set of managers talked about success, brought it. Others talked about style, sacked. Now, I think Ange is very much about both. As I said yesterday, I think he's very understated in how he speaks. He's not someone making big bravado statements. He's got a mad demeanour about him, and then he lets the football do the talking. I don't mind that at all. In fact, I like that, admire it. I think the thing is, though, fans are fickle people, right? And myself included. Oh, wait, Roy Keane, right? So the thing is, if we talk about going, you'll give him this season, right off this season, they are kidding themselves. On anyone who said that, already we've put ourselves in a position by playing the brand of football we've seen so far, that if he was to go on a 3 or 4 match losing run, they'd be calling for his head. That's just how it works. So I don't think that Ange is going to come here and basing everything on style. I think there's a huge adaptation that he's making as well. He'll have realised from the moment he walked in that it has to be this season. You don't get a season's grace. Any fans that kid themselves on that happens as well, have short memories. They will not put up with it. Even if right now they're sitting going, oh no, if we can see signs of progress, man. Nonsense. You won't put up with it. You won't put up with second best here. So I think Ange has realised that, and I think he's made signings in Abada for the long term, and the likes of Joe Hart, McCarthy, that are far more like here and now signings. And for this season in particular, they've been brought in to have an instant impact. Whereas Abada would probably be someone that you could say, if they don't hit it off straight away, he's on a 6-year deal. Although, of course, contrary to that, Abada's hit the ground running. But do you know what I mean? I think he's definitely he's got a balancing act that he's achieved, Ange. And I think when he goes into the game against AZ Alkmaar, this is the right time for the team to have this challenge, Paul. This is the right time for that challenge. Midtjylland was a step too early. This now, we have built up enough momentum now to take on, I think, very decent opposition. Let's now test ourselves in those sort of waters, especially with the huge crunch game at Ibrox coming up at the end of the month as well. This is perfect warm-up for that as well, to sort of find our level, see if Ange Ball works against AZ Alkmaar, see if it does, see if we can blow them away. and that gives you greater confidence in what you're doing as well. I'm really looking forward to it, but I think it's the right game at the right time.
A couple of things you mentioned there, talking about the tempo. We will have to find a way, Natasha, to keep that up for 90 minutes. I mean, if that's the way you play and 2 or 3 guys can't play for 90 minutes in that tempo, and you're quite happy that that's the case and you take them off the last 20, 25 minutes, then fine. But if we want to blow teams away, we can't just do it for half a game. We can't just do it for an hour, because then we're the club that tires. We're the team that tires. And again, when you're on the back foot, that's far more tiring anyway. But, you know, we've seen it already, the drop-off in performance, where that speed and that tempo has been lost in the latter part of a game. But it's almost as if people are saying it's one of the things you can't expect that to go for 90 minutes. Well, we're going to have to. If that is what we're adapting to, if that's what we've adopted under Ange, you've got to play 90 minutes at that pace, at that tempo. And, you know, some of the players that we have might not be able to, and Tom Roderick being one of them, potentially, although he's shown some great form. But if they're all maximised, and that is where we're expecting to be playing that level of speed and tempo, then surely we can expect for that to be a 90-minute thing. I mean, Celtic have always primed themselves on scoring the last minute goals, you know, 2 minutes into injury time, it doesn't matter. Last kick of the ball, if Celtic's scoring, it's an equaliser or a winner. That you would almost expect that. You know, it was never over until that moment. We can't now say we've got to put every game to bed in the first 60 minutes, because after that we're knackered.
You know, I think that's right, is that Celtic used to always be known for having superior fitness to the teams that we played. So when it got into the last 15, the last 20, it showed the team had been chasing us for the previous 70 minutes of the game. They couldn't keep up with that. And then our sort of dominance and our superior fitness levels took over. I think what we're seeing now maybe isn't so much that we can't keep the tempo up for the 90 minutes, it's that the depth in the squad that we have can't come in and play to the level of the players that have been on before them. So I think we saw that slightly against Hearts. I think the substitutions that came on detrimented the team. I think that they weren't able to instantly get up to the speed of the game. I don't think they had the same quality as the players that they were replacing. So I think there was a bit of a quality and depth issue. But equally, you know, if you're saying that about players like Ayeti, what use is it to him to give him 3 minutes at the end of the game and then expect him to be up to speed and take that chance that he probably should have scored? But how is he ever going to be match sharp and match fit if that is all he is getting, those 3 minutes at the end of the games? So it's a difficult one. I don't think that Ange will compromise his style. I think that we'll see against AZ Alkmaar, and I think we'll see against Rangers whether this is indeed the case. But for me, I don't expect him to change style on the basis of the opposition that we're playing. I think that was something that Brendan Rodgers was actually guilty of. One thing that, you know, he could be criticised for, he was a great manager for us during the time he was here, but one thing he could be criticised for is when he tried to change formation tactics to play against the opposition, it didn't quite work. Remains to be seen, but for me, I don't think Ange is that sort of manager. I think he will try and play the same football and the same style regardless of the opposition. Whether that will be successful or not against some of the better teams we play remains to be seen, but I don't think he will compromise on the way that he thinks football should be played. I think that is what he will want to see regardless of who we are playing. So I think that is what we will try and see against Alkmaar. I don't expect many changes to the squad to what we've seen, with maybe the exception if Christie is fit, will he come in for Edouard? Because I think that works slightly better and have Kyogo in more of a position that suits him naturally. That would probably be one of the only change that I would expect to see ahead of the Alkmaar game, and I think that he will continue to play football the way he thinks it should be played, and will improve our fitness levels throughout the season to try and match that.
Can we get a win tomorrow night, Natasha?
Yeah, I think we can. If we keep playing the way we are, if we try and defend a bit more solidly at the back, I think it's. Do you remember when we spoke to Jared from Celtic State of Mind? He said that Ange's teams play in a way that you will lose 2 goals and score 4. I think we've kind of seen a bit of that already, and I think that might be the case against Alkmaar as well. But remember, this isn't a team who are flying either. They're having their own issues. They're not having some great results. They've lost a few key players. They're having issues with their captain. So they're by no means a team problem-free either. And we need to take advantage of the fact that we are a team whose momentum is going in the right direction. And I think we can win, we can build on that, and we can keep the momentum going until the end of the month when we do go to Ibrox.
Let's hope so. Natasha, you mentioned the captain. He's a top goal scorer. He's a Dutch internationalist, and he will obviously be going toe-to-toe with our own captain, McGregor, as we will speak about him in a moment or two. Looking through the squad, I know you will like this one, Russell. They've got a player called Maxim Hulett. Guess who his dad is?
Rude.
And his mother is a niece of Johan Cruyff, so he might have some good genes going on there. Although I don't think he'll be featuring tomorrow night. 20 years of age, he's not played that many games, but yeah, it's a definite step up when it comes to quality. But I do feel, looking at some of these points coming in, that we should be better prepared. And we'll look at a comment coming in on YouTube from Powerman 1988. Announced Liam Scales and Josip Juranovic get the money paid. Even that, for me, isn't enough. I think that there's still more players required over and above that. I think Scales, coming from the Irish Premier League to this level, let's say, he signed 2 or 3 weeks ago and he was playing tomorrow night. Is he at that level? I don't think so. I think that's something that could be regarded as a project. You've got to get him up to speed before you can throw him in a game like this. And further to that, Powerman goes on to say 40 million is at stake in terms of winning the league. This is there for the taking, easily with a few additions to strengthen the squad. And David Bradley agrees, not getting players in fast enough, not good. Celtic, Paddy Hutchison points out, season ticket money aside, last Thursday paid for Heart. With the revenue coming in from tomorrow, stop playing about and offer Legia what they want for the right back. Of course, there's another point, but it gets a bit personal in relation to an individual, so I won't bring it up. But they're asking, or they're saying, it's been at least 2 days since we had a go at the board, so you were expecting a negative vibe today. Now, you know what, in terms of comments and social media, everything doesn't have to be a negative and a positive. You're allowed to speak about a situation. You're allowed to ask a question for debate in relation to Postecoglou. Will he get the backing from the board? And if he doesn't, then yeah, absolutely, you'll criticise the board, because it's clear for everybody to see that we're not good enough in certain areas of the park. And if you're an apologist for the board and you don't want anybody to question them, I think that's a bigger risk to take as a Celtic fan when you're looking at a situation that, let's remember, we're rebuilding from last season, which was one of the worst seasons in living memory. You know, no trophies whatsoever after 4 consecutive trebles. And you're asking us not to scrutinise what the board are not doing. I'm afraid it doesn't work like that. Now, when we're looking at the captain of our opponents tomorrow, we also need to look at our own captain. We've been talking about players who have looked rejuvenated under Ange Postecoglou. Think back to last season, Callum McGregor's worst season in a Celtic jersey, Natasha, and compare it to the start to this season. How impressed have you been?
Very. Callum McGregor has been absolutely phenomenal this season, and he is thriving and playing some of the best football I've seen him play. A lot of people questioned whether he was the right candidate for captain. He was certainly the best choice that we had in our team, but there was a lot of questions around his personality, his characteristics. Was he the right successor for Scott Brown? I think any doubts that anyone had over that are well and truly put to bed over the last few performances from Callum McGregor. He has made that role his own. He is the engine of the team. He drives everyone around him. He constantly is talking to every player around about them, whether that's encouragement, positioning, everything. He's really, really controlling our team from the middle of that pitch. And not only that, his own game has been absolutely brilliant. I think it's, like I said, it's the best football that I've seen McGregor play in a long, long time. And, you know, it just shows what slight tweaks and management and coaching and tactics can do to rejuvenate some of these players. And McGregor isn't the only one. You know, Ryan Christie as well has been playing some incredible football over the last few games prior to the knock that he took. So it's really encouraging to see that Ange has come in and made these players better players compared to what we saw last season, which was unfortunately some good players being made to look like average players. You know, the prime example of how this has happened in the opposite last season was when Laxalt came in. And he looked like a great player for the first few weeks, and all of a sudden his performances went downhill massively, as did everyone's round about him. Ange has rejuvenated this club, and the performances he's getting out of players who looked average last season is incredible, and I hope it continues. And for someone like Ryan Christie, who is now playing the best football he's played in years, if this is what Ange can do for him, and this is what Ange can get out of him in a football capacity a couple of months into the job, surely you would be tempted to stay and continue to work under a manager that is getting this level of performance out of you. Think of the doors that could open for you at the end of this season if you are to stay for one more. Obviously, that's going to be up to Ryan. Maybe he wants one of these doors to open for him now. But if I was him, I would definitely be tempted to continue to work under a manager that is getting so much out of him at the moment.
Now, there's a few people saying no teams go hell for leather for 90 minutes. Well, I think when you come up against the top class sides, and we are trying to compete in these competitions, you know, against elite level opponents, I think you'll find that you are up against it for 90 minutes. It's relentless when you come up to that level. So if you are of that mindset and you think it's okay, you can manage to switch off for 10 or 15 minutes, I think that's a dangerous game to play as well. Coming in from Periscope on Twitter, took Liverpool 12 months to get up to 90 minutes of pressing and running under Klopp. Yeah, and it is going to take some time. And again, obviously, when you're looking at what we have seen so far, Strangelove the Doctor points it out, we are nowhere near the finish line in regards to embedding Ange's style, but by God, we have started. We have seen some incredible signs that we are moving in that direction. Russell, we're talking about Callum McGregor last season, one of those players that regressed, looked to have regressed, as did many others, Ryan Christie being another example. Yet he's flourishing under Ange Postecoglou. He's flourishing with the captaincy. Did you expect that?
I think it was very much a case for Cal McGregor of sink or swim. And I think a lot of us were concerned from last season, that, myself included, that the actual weight of the captain's armband might actually be a burden to him. Such was that, you know, the lack of confidence he was playing with, the lack of form that he had. You thought, is this really an added factor that he's really needing in his game with a new manager? It turns out, of course, he's absolutely thrived with the captaincy. It looks to me as though the shadow perhaps that he was in of Scott Brown being away has actually been a good thing for Callum McGregor in a way. I'm sure he has stolen traits. In fact, I actually think after the huddle the other night, he ran and, like, you know, he did that short sprint jump in the air and headed the ball like
I've noticed this.
Ball. He did, didn't he?
I've noticed it.
That was very Scott Brown-esque. So I think he's took a lot of those influences, but now he's went, it's now my time to shine. And I think he's to me now the perfect ambassador for Celtic in terms of his attitude, application, the double A as Tony calls it. He's got all of that in abundance. And what a role model for the likes of David Turnbull. He's still only, 21, 22, David Turnbull? He's looking up to that guy, playing with him day in, day out. You only need to see no further than Kieran Tierney's, how influenced he was by Scott Brown and how he's took a lot of those ethics down to Arsenal. Whether it be a Tesco carrier bag with football boots in it, whether it be short sleeves every single day at training, you know, they all think this is crazy stuff. But that was the influence Scott Brown had and completely put on it Tierney. Callum McGregor could have a very similar impact, some of our younger guys coming through, and maybe some of the more experienced ones as well. I think he's got the right characteristics to be a Celtic captain. I'm glad that he's really grown into the role from the get-go. He's grown into the role. He's jumped into the role basically and took it with both hands, which has been fantastic. I'm actually kind of surprised that it's went this way based on last season, but I suppose there's so many factors that we're seeing this season that surprise you from, you know, some of the habits we were seeing from players last season in terms of improved performance or in terms of Callum McGregor, the whole package.
You know, you're talking about short sleeves up at Lennoxtown. No captain would convince me that was a good idea. I'd have a snood on, maybe even an anorak with a hood, long sleeves all day long, tights, tracky bottoms. the works. It's frozen up there. Now, Dead Mouse comes in, talk about Celtic having superior fitness. It's harking back to the days of Steen. And although Jock Steen's sides were famously fit, I think you could hark back to even Brendan Rodgers' side, the goal that clinched the invincible treble. You know, it was virtually the last kick of the ball. I think what we're talking about here is, after Neil Lennon left first time round, comments made by Ronnie Dyler was that the players weren't fit. Their diet wasn't right. It took a long time to get that conditioning right. And I think that the same thing happened again, second time round with Lenny, and the fitness wasn't there. And you've gone from there to, I mean, what was the stat? 43% of our goals last season were conceded after the 70th minute. We were conceding goals late on. That's domestically as well. We were conceding goals late on. So there's an issue with the fitness. Ange's come in, and he's obviously focused on that. But he's not just focusing on the fitness. He's also looking at the fact that we are trying to play this high tempo style of football for an entire game, or until you beat the opposition into submission. And that's all fair and well if it works well and you're beating sides 5-6-0. But like at the weekend there, if they get a penalty and then there's a dodgy decision at the back or whatever it might be, and you're hanging on and you've already used all your energy levels, then it becomes an issue. So it's something that needs to be managed. And whether or not you can ever get a team playing to that level of tempo for 90 minutes is an argument that could rage on. But we need to get the management of the fitness levels right. They weren't right last season. And I think the amount of goals, fitness and concentration, because the amount of goals we were losing late on in the game was ridiculous. It was criminal when you look at the stats. Captain McGregor, yes, I did have concerns. I wanted Ayer to be the captain, and for other reasons that didn't happen. I think I like the style of Stephen Welsh as a leader. You were speaking about Luke Salt last season, Natasha, and we've spoken about the fact that, you know, Welsh was talking him through games. This is a guy who's played at a World Cup for Uruguay, and he was at the time he was an AC Milan player, yet young Stephen Welsh, with about 20 games under his belt, was talking him through games. I still see that leadership quality in Welsh. And I'm looking at Stephen Welsh and David Turnbull and asking myself, you know, it's not going to be long before Scotland squads are announced. Do you think these two guys are playing themselves into Steve Clarke's plans?
They absolutely have to be. It's as simple as that. They're both putting great performances in so far for Celtic. Maybe Turnbull isn't quite at the level that he was last season, but he still has to be in and around those Scotland considerations. Just touching on Welsh and his leadership, I think that's still really apparent this season. Even with, you know, experienced players round about him, he's really taking on a sort of leadership role at the back. If you remember back to when Beaton unfortunately got himself sent off again, we went down to 10 players for that short period of time. It was Welsh organising where everyone had to be to sort of cover for that period of time, pulling Sorrell back, telling him where to go, who to track. Welsh took charge of that situation. So your experienced centre half, I don't know if he's either of these things, and Beaton was sent off, and Welsh owned that issue, owned the circumstances, took charge of it, controlled it. And I think that's remarkable for someone of his age, and he's only going to continue to grow with the amount of game time he's getting, the amount of European experience he's getting. So for someone of his age, he is really, really doing very well for himself and has to be in the considerations for that Scotland squad, regardless of how old he is. When you look at the Scotland squad in general, centre halves are not positions that we have exactly had an abundance of talent for in recent years. So I don't see why Welsh shouldn't be in and around those discussions. Turnbull, yes, again, I think he can do a job for the Scotland squad. We've already discussed. I don't think he is playing at the same level he was last season. We're talking about fine margins. Turnbull is still playing very, very well. But what we do know is that we've got more to come from him. He can reach the levels that he was playing at for the last 6 months of the previous season. So we've got more to come from him. And I think he's the sort of player who'll benefit from some squad rotation that we're likely to see. Though an area we do have depth in is that sort of area in the middle of the park. And I think Ange will utilise that, especially with the sort of overload of games that we've got coming up. I think he'll utilise that rotation. And I think that'll benefit a player like Turnbull.
See, when you look at it there, Russell, just a few weeks ago, Turnbull was getting massive kind of criticism around some of his performances. People were doubting whether or not he could play in Ange's team. I think he's proved those detractors wrong. He started performing again, hopefully building himself up to the same levels of last season. But when you're looking at the likes of Turnbull and Welsh as a new generation coming through, do you think that they are international class? I certainly think that Turnbull is. And as Natasha says, we have had a dearthy centre-halves for the Scotland national team for years. Maybe Welsh is unfashionable. You know, we've said in the past if he was playing for Hibs, we'd be interested in buying him. Yeah, he's playing for Celtic and we just see him as a stopgap until another centre-half comes in. Where do you sit on the Stephen Welsh debate?
No, I think Stephen Welsh, as I say, is someone that's almost at times has had too much onus put on him at this stage of his career, which I absolutely agree with Natasha. Yes, he's thrived on it, and yes, he does take ownership when there's and responsibility when required. But is it really fair? That's my argument with it. And I just think right now he's in a position where he is the guy we're looking at the defence. He is your first pick of that back four by a country mile right now. That's no offence to Ralston, who's a close second these days, right? But with some great performances. But if you had to pick one out of the four, everyone would, put their money on Welsh, 100%, right, out of the four. I just feel that in this stage of his development, he would benefit so much from, firstly, Julian just being fit. If he was fit, that'd be great. Problem solved. For me, he then competes with Carl Starfelt for the jersey. And I think that would be quite refreshing for Welsh as well, to be in real competition, as opposed to last season, the Neil Lennon hokey-cokey approach, where it's, put your left foot in, your left foot out, in, out, nonsense. That's just not a way to bring a player's progress at all. When they've made their second ever start against Rangers, and then you're axed from the team for 3 months or 2 months, whatever it was. That's just nonsense. It can't go like that. I think he now should just be considered as a first team defender, and then it's up to him to win the jersey. You know what I mean? What else we bring in, I still think a reinforcement in that area. With regards to international football, Lawrence will like this one, since I'm in his shoes. If Nathan Patterson could be called up to the Euros, let's say any reason why Stephen Welsh can't.
Listen, Russell, see that point you made there about the jersey, right? So Ralston is undoubtedly our first choice right back.
Yeah.
When you look at the other options that we have at the club, one of them is actually Stephen Welsh can play it right back, but as a backup, Leo Connor, he's playing for the Colts team, so Urhoghide doesn't look as though he's ready for the first team. So he's your first choice right back. Your first choice centre half alongside Starfelt is Stephen Welsh. Absolutely no doubt about it. But what happens when we bring in, which inevitably we will, a new right back in the next 2 weeks, a new centre half in the next 2 weeks? Do we do what we did against Hearts and we throw them right in the team? We did that with Starfelt. And you're just expecting them to develop an understanding at the heart of the defence. And we did it with Joe Hart as well. He signs, we throw him right in the team. Is that what you would expect? Because although we're crying out for these players, should they be bedded in? Ralston and Welsh have played the vast majority. Ralston's played all the games. Welsh has played the majority of games. You're trying to get an understanding between the two centre-halves and the goalkeeper behind you, but also the two inverted fullbacks. They're developing an understanding of where to go and when to get back, etc. And then you're going to bring in these new defenders. How do you deal with them, Russell? Because at this moment in time, both of those players mentioned would be feeling aggrieved if they were dropped.
No, it's all about competition, though. This is the thing. And if the two young guys feel aggrieved, then I would say they're at the wrong club. Because Celtic are always going to be pushed. I always hark back to the Roy Keane signing. Not for manager. Everyone calm down. No, we're not revving that bus up. But Roy Keane, when he signed as a midfielder, the reason he joined, do you know what it was? Because Gordon Strachan said to me at dinner, "You'll struggle to get in my team, by the way, because Petrov and Lennon are my first two picks." And he was like, "You what?" And that actually frustrated him enough to turn down Real Madrid and sign for Celtic, because he thought, there is no way, I'm showing you, mate, I'll be in your team, I can guarantee you. Strachan did a very clever Jedi mind trick, obviously, by doing that, because of course Keane was going to get in the team one way or the other. But that was how to push someone's buttons. And that's because Roy Keane at that time was a serial winner, and competition is something he thrived on. It made him a better player. So for me, Welsh has to be looking at the situation of going, bring in an experienced boy, but it'll be me who plays with them, and your £4 million boy will be the one on the bench. That's got to be the attitude. And I think from the right back right now, Ralston's put himself in a position going, have you seen my goals? Have you seen my contributions? Good luck, mate. That's got to be the attitude. But none of them should feel aggrieved, because competition is something that is always going to be fierce. at Celtic, a club as big as Celtic. If you want to be a first team regular here, you have to expect competition for the jersey every single season.
See your Gordon Strachan point. I actually think that he was being totally bluntly I think he was being totally blunt with Roy Keane. I don't think it was a Jedi mind trick. I think he was just saying, you might not get a game, because that's the type of guy he is. What is the situation with Strachan anyway? Is he going to get to do his freelance work with us, or what's happening? I mean, that's going to the SFA. Has there been an update on that, Natasha?
Not that I've seen. I believe that they are investigating it, but I don't really see them stepping in to stop this. At the end of the day, if Celtic are okay with it and Dundee are okay with it and Strachan are okay with it, I can't see them having too much issue, although I know that that's not perhaps how they'll implement their rules. It remains to be seen. It just seems like a fair bit of hassle for a 3-month appointment, does it not? How essential is his role that he's going to be doing, whatever form it'll take, that we need to go through this? But yeah, we'll see the outcome of that. I don't think we've had an update. I'm not sure when he starts. I'm not sure particularly what he'll be doing, other than consulting on the youth team for the women's team, I believe. If Meikle thinks that that's something that's needed, then fair enough. I can't particularly see what it's going to add. Maybe it will, if we're indeed allowed to do it, that is.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that progresses. I mean, EPH comes in on one of the points we've already discussed. It's this tempo that got us to the 2003 Europa League final. The UEFA Cup back then, that team, they played to a high tempo from start to finish. You look at some of the nights in Europe where, at no point did you ever see the likes of Chris Sutton or Alan Thompson or Henrik Larsson dipping off for the last 10-15 minutes. At no point. It was played at the same tempo throughout, and that was a mark of Martin O'Neill's early teams at Celtic. Now, Dead Mouse comes in. We've been talking a wee bit about the Colts, and he says that Ajeti should be sent, given the run of games with Griff. Unfortunately, it's not. We're not able to do that because, in terms of overage players, you can only do that with goalkeepers, can't you? In a scenario where a goalie is required. So it's not like the old reserve days where you could throw a couple of the more experienced guys in to give them game time, build their confidence, and in turn, that would help some of the young guys they're playing with. So unfortunately, as good as an idea as that would be, I don't know how Ajeti would take playing in the fifth tier of Scottish football, to be fair, but we can't actually do that. And we've also got someone coming in on Twitch, one of our new platforms, telling us that you're watching from Brazil. Fantastic, Victory 124. Thanks for tuning in. On the point of the Colts, what's your take on that? When we're beating teams 10-0, we spoke about it last season, Natasha, with the women's team. There's a few part-time teams, for example, and they're getting hammered 10-0. I mean, they're getting hammered regularly, aren't they? Is it just a case that there's a few bad teams in that league, or do you think that, going back to a point Jim Orr made when this announcement was made with the Colts, maybe the level's not as high as it should be in order to get the development right for those young players?
I think the league can probably be assessed quite similarly to the Women's League, in that there's a massive discrepancy in the level of the teams that are in that league. I think that some of the teams will give the Colts a run for their money. We've actually already seen that at one of the earlier games. Some of them will provide good competition, a good level for playing against, and some of them we will see 10-0 scorelines. And it's something we're seeing the women's team have as well. They go up against teams like Rangers and Glasgow City and Hibs, and they're tight games. And then they play teams like Forford and win 10-0. We're going to see the same sort of thing from the Colts because of the differential levels of the way the teams in that league are. So yes, some games are going to be nothing more than slight training exercises for the attackers, but maybe that presents a chance for squad rotation. Some of the players who are in the fringes of the Colts squad even, who will then get a chance to play against some of the teams who don't have the quality that some of the teams in the league do. And then there will be the tougher tests where we do play our strongest Colts team. So it's a bit of a difficult one. There are going to be games that are easier than others, and I think what we see in those leagues that we don't see in the league that the first team play in is that the level that the players are playing at is just massively different, and it probably just presents different opportunities rather than issues. It presents the opportunity to try something different against the sort of lower level teams, and I still think it's a good thing for Celtic to have the team in that league.
Yeah, I mean, I think the alternative is no football at all, or if you are playing, it's a bounce game up at Lennox Down against guys the same age, Russell. So even though, you're going to get occasions where, Owen Muffet scores 5 goals and you win 10-0, it's better than not playing competitive football. Some might say that's not competitive, but it's not like that every week. I mean, there are some very good sides down there. I mean, do you think it's something that the authorities and the clubs will accept going forward? I know it's just a 1-year trial, but beyond this season, do you think it's something that will continue, that we will have a club in the pyramid?
I think it's too early to call yet. I mean, obviously, if you've seen a pattern of consistent 10-0 recorded victories, then perhaps they would reevaluate at the end of the season. But right now, I think as well, people forget we operate in Scotland. It's not a big country. You're not expecting the 5th tier or the 4th tier of Scottish football, the 5th tier it is, of Scottish football, to have, loads of quality, as well as having 4 professional leagues above it or semi-professional leagues above it. We're now talking about teams in here, 42 SPFL clubs, and now you're looking like to the latter 40s into the 50s clubs in Scotland, a country with a population of 5 million. You can't tell me you're expecting, dearths of quality into the non-league game. I think Natasha's absolutely spot on. There'll be some teams that will be probably more well off than other clubs, and perhaps have had bigger budgets and attracted players who want to pursue careers elsewhere but still play football to a decent level. There'll probably be a couple of clubs at that will give the Colts a good game. The rest of the teams, there may well be. There is a disparity between Celtic, Colts and the rest. The only way to get better is by playing better opposition, though. So hopefully it encourages the clubs and it does improve them over the next year. It may well all be looked at in a negative light as well if we do see too many scorelines with 10, although I'm predicting the first team to do that as well this season.
Yeah, we'll come back to that because you announced that yesterday, Russell, and we shall see. The closest I ever saw, I think we beat Arbroath 9-0 when Danny McGrain was the manager of Arbroath, and I remember beating Mark McGee's Aberdeen 9-0 at Celtic Park, and I'm sure Hooper scored 5 that day. Paddy McCourt came on and scored a penalty kick. Strange Love the Doctor, I tend to agree with this. The Colts should be allowed to work their way up and find their level. If promotion was allowed, and it's not going to be this season, then they would inevitably find their level, and then I'm pretty sure the club would continue to invest until they were happy that they were playing at a level that was going to develop the young players and prevent them from leaving for pathways elsewhere. So, big week of football this week, Natasha. We've got the Champions League and also the Europa League tomorrow. We will be covering both games. Hopefully we'll get 2 victories, but they're 2 very, very tough games against big opposition. We will cover every kick of the ball. Thanks everybody for getting involved. If you're watching on YouTube, then subscribe. You will be in for monthly prizes. Free. This month it's a Fratelli's Platinum disc. Next month it's a bit of concept kit with artwork, Russell. We go from one to the next. We've got loads of framed items here, signed Bobby Lennox stuff, all that kind of memorabilia, and we'll be giving it away. So just subscribe, and whilst you do that, stick on the notifications, and they will tell you every time ACSOM comes back on. We'll be back at 2:00 with the State of Politics. Declan McConville and Patrick McGill will be joined by Kevin McKenna, who is a great commentator of politics as well as being a big Celtic fan. He, in actual fact, edited my first book on the Quality Street Gang. A really good guy. I look forward to that at 2:00. And then at 6:00, the State of Scottish Football tonight, followed by Russell and Kevin, who will be getting into the DeLorean to go back to, I think, 1991 on Schema Celica. Look forward to all of that. All that's left for me to say is thank you, Russell Boyce and Natasha Meikle, for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.